Welcome back to another video. In this video, I thought we'd create one and talk about some of the most common sourcing mistakes that I see recruiters do time and time again, and really hope that this would help you. But before we get started, please consider supporting a fellow recruiter. Give us a like, subscribe, click that bell. Honestly, it would mean a lot and give us the excitement and energy to continue making these videos just for you. So the first mistake I see recruiters doing is not reaching out to the relevant people by title, right? So let's say that you have a client who's looking for a senior software engineer and they're ideally looking for someone with maybe 3 to 5 years of experience. That typically means 3 to 5 years of relevant experience, right? So how that translates into this job is that they ideally want someone with 3 to 5 years of overall software engineering experience. What I see a lot is perhaps you find someone who's a software engineer currently or at the previous role, and then they have 3, 5, 6, 7 years of experience doing another role that's completely irrelevant. That's just not going to be a good fit. Then you're really only looking at someone with maybe half a year or maybe 2 years of experience of software engineering, and that's just not enough. This person's way too junior, right? What really matters to a company is the specific length of time that the candidate or the job seeker has done in the role that they're hiring for. They want someone with 10 plus years specifically in design, not someone who's been in design for 2 years, being a financial accountant for 3 years, and then being an architect for 5 years before that. Like, that's just not a good fit, right? If they're looking for someone with at least 2 to 3 years of design, that might be a better fit. But if they're looking for someone with at least 10 full years of design experience, they want someone with 10 plus years of design experience. A second mistake, this kind of goes into the second mistake I see, is not really paying attention to folks that are leadership, management, or IC or hands-on, which is individual contributor, right? So typically if someone is looking for entry-level role or a mid-level role, maybe with 1 year to 5, 6 years of overall professional experience, most likely they want someone who's still willing to be hands-on. They're looking for like a digital marketing manager, right? Are they still hands-on in Google AdWords or Facebook AdWords, right? Doing the actual ads or going to the ad manager themselves. They're looking for a designer. They want someone who's still happy to be hands-on with design at this job. Same thing with a software engineer. Same thing with a plumber or electrician. They're not looking for just a leader who all they want to do is just manage others to do the work, right? They want someone to be like hands-on. So, and I'm just using more like the tech industry as an example, but this can be applied to really anything. Did you just start your own recruitment agency and are struggling getting your own clients? Are you thinking about starting your own agency but afraid to make the jump? Do you have your own clients but you're struggling to find the perfect candidates fast? Do you have a full-time job and want to do recruitment part-time to make more money on the side and have no idea how to? If you answered yes to any of these questions, please consider joining our private community. It is a trust-based community where recruiters around the world can support, collaborate, and work together on placements all around the year consistently. In this community, you will directly have access to the real open jobs of my team and of our members, and you will also have the chance to access trainings, events, giveaways, and much more. If you are part of this community, I communicate and work with you as if you were on my own team, and I'll do whatever I can to do a placement together with your client or candidate. So if you're struggling to get your own clients or candidates and you want a way you can make sure you can be busy all year round by having access to many more open roles, then this is something you need to look into. This is open to people around the world and is open for recruiters in every industry and experience levels, as we will always have a good number of variety of open jobs across sectors, markets, and industries. I'm really happy to say that within the first 30 days, we have already have a new member with minimal recruiting experience do his first placement that had a total fee of almost $30,000 US, and we are working hard to do many more this year. If you are interested and excited, there are only a limited number of spots open, so make sure you sign up quick at patreon.com/recruiterpreston. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Discord. We can set up a time to chat. See you on the other side. What I see a lot is, let's say, and I'm just using more like the tech industry as an example, but this can be applied to really anything. Let's say a company is looking for a designer, right, with 5 to 8 years of experience. There is a chance that people within those years of experience, some of them might already be a manager or be an associate manager now, right? Would they actually be the best fit? Now, here's where really the nuance is, because you could find a manager who's managing now, who was hands-on up until they become a manager, who's still happy to be hands-on for their next role. Or you could be talking to a manager now, and all they want to do is management moving forward. So it really depends on the candidate when you actually speak with them, but also depends on what the client wants, who the hiring manager wants to hire. If they make it very clear to you that they want someone who's hands-on and they don't really care if that person managed before, then that's great. great to know. If they want someone who's hands-on, who's never managed, they just want a really nice, clean resume of someone who progressed as an IC professional up until where they are currently at, then that's also really good to know. If you have no idea what the client wants, you're not doing a good job of going through it and talking with them and really understanding what they want, so you know exactly who to look for. On the flip side, if you talk to the candidates and you have to really understand, cool, like is most of your scope hands-on or are you managing? What percentage is management? What percentage is hands-on? Or by your resume, it just looks like you're hands-on your whole life. Have you actually done a lot of management? You see, a lot of times the titles that people might have are pretty accurate, but they're not necessarily 100% accurate. You might just have someone who on paper looks like they're an IC or someone who's just hands-on, but in reality at that company, they might have done a lot of management on the side. And so that's where you really have to dig deep and talk to the candidates. But it really depends mostly on the client, who they're hiring for, what's okay, what's not okay, and then we go out there and find the candidates most likely that are the perfect fit. Now, when it comes to just like startups or even large companies like Netflix or Amazon, someone who's a senior software engineer at Amazon could be very different in scope and responsibilities, maybe even mentorship and management, than someone who's like a software engineer at a 10 or 50 person startup, right? A lot of times at larger companies, you can have someone that might seem like an IC, but when you talk to them, they're actually like, yeah, I'm leading teams, I'm leading multiple teams, I'm managing X, Y, and Z people. And if that's all they're doing, they might actually not be the perfect fit for your client because they really just want a really good mid-level IC. So it's very hard to make snapshot judgments just on someone's LinkedIn profile, resume, Indeed profile, whatever you find them. It's really, really, really important to actually talk to the candidates and dig deep and to understand, what have they done? What have they not done? You know, what are they looking to do? Does that match with the expectations and needs of the clients and the hiring manager? The next mistake I see that recruiters do a lot is just go after the perfect candidate, right? While we all want to find the perfect candidate, yes, they do exist. Is it hard to find them? Yes. But even if they do exist, what guarantee is there that this candidate would, first of all, be looking for a new job or even have an open mind? And even if they had an open mind, what guarantee is there that they would actually want to respond to your outreach or even be interested in your client, right? So on one hand, it's very important that your targeting is on point. But on the other hand, if you go too extreme and targeting is too focused, your target market pool might be too small, right? If you're looking for a software engineer with ideally 20 things, right, that the client wants, and they understand that finding someone with 20 things is very difficult, but that would be like an amazing unicorn. You plug all that in, and maybe just hypothetically as an example, only 5 people in the US have those 20 things. Of course, you can reach out to them and you can follow up and you can try to break in and engage them, but you don't also just want to like depend the whole search on just 5 people, right? So it's also really, really important to find people that could have maybe 80 or maybe close to 85, 90% of the things that could work their way up into becoming unicorn, or that could be good enough for the client. And it's not just finding the people, it's also being able to educate and communicate that to the client, saying, hey, these people, while they're not sexy, while they don't have everything you're looking for, they might still be good enough. And we think after talking to them that they are good enough and you should be open-minded or have an open mind to engage, right? And so our job is not just to find the person, our job is how can we find the right people, build that pipeline, and subsequently, hopefully leading to a successful placement, right? It's very easy to find the perfect person, but it's very difficult to engage them because maybe it's too targeted, they're not even interested, and then you don't want to be like, oh wow, in the entire world there's only 5 people, we can't do any more searches. Like, that's completely false. Most of our best placements are people who optically might not have the best things, but when you talk to them, they are good enough, or they're more than good enough, and they end up being the rock stars of some of the best hires at a company. So it's all about like doing whatever you have to set yourself up for success. Getting a client who wants to work with you, who's hiring, is great, but now it's like, what do you have to do or to basically be successful here? And if you're just, you know, shooting yourself in the foot and you're way too targeted and you're like, oh my God, there's no one else to find, you're doing something wrong. So my biggest recommendation is you got to open up a little bit, right? Open up the different layers of the onion, broaden your search out a little bit, be creative maybe with geographic locations and Boolean and keyword and skills and all of that, maybe the school degrees, the companies they're working at, and try to find more people, because we're not trying to just find one person. You want to build a pipeline. That's how placements are made, not just finding one person and lucking out. You want to build a pipeline. So if a placement happens, the numbers are likely in your favor, so the placement comes to you, not to anybody else. So still be targeted. Quality is extremely important, but sometimes focusing too much on quality can bite yourself in the foot it. So just make sure you take a couple steps back, you have a decent pool to engage, and you build that pipeline. The next mistake that I see a lot of recruiters do is simply just ignoring the red flags, right? What are some red flags that you can expect when it comes to candidates? So, and again, what I may say may or may not apply to your industry or all industries, but these are just general red flags. So number one, job hopping, right? We kind of define job hopping as people who've been at companies for a year or shorter. And if you talk to a candidate and they've done it once or twice, that's fine in context. So like if they've done it once or twice and all the other companies before, you know, they stayed there longer than a year and a half or 2 years, 3 years plus, there might be some good explanations or reasoning. Or maybe they just had a string of bad luck, right? Maybe they joined one company, they ended up doing layoffs. So they had to join another company, they ended up having a horrible relationship with the manager. So while optically it could look like someone might have a red flag, it's all about talking to them and understanding like what happened here. Most of the time people have legitimate excuses or reasons, but there are those people that intentionally, you know, go for jobs, stay there for a year or under, and then they just keep on doing that, right? And so you really have to try to like talk to them and be like, hey, is this your intention? Most of the time, a lot of them are like, no, I'm looking for something long-term, but then they just continue the same pattern. So, but generally speaking, a lot of hiring managers start to get concerned when they see a resume of people who are just working at a bunch of jobs for very, very short term, because they're like, wow, if I hire this person myself, I think there's a high likelihood they're just gonna bounce to the next better opportunity, right? So definitely keep that in the back of your mind. The second red flag are people who've done a bunch of freelancing or contracting roles, right? And then now they want something full-time. So the question is, why do they want something full-time? Why have they done a lot of contracting in the past? What shift and what caused that shift in the candidate's mind? But most importantly, when it comes to the company's point of view, for some reason, psychologically, like contracting and freelancing, while they might have done great work with great companies, for a lot of hiring managers and founders, it's just not the same thing or doesn't hold as much kind of substance or robust kind of gravitas as someone working like a W-2 payroll here in America full-time, right? So why? Because, you know, getting a job full-time, you go through a more, what people can perceive a better or harder, rigorous interview process. Could be easier to get a contracting job, even you might argue that it's not. There's a lot of bias, unconscious and subconscious, that goes in this territory, whether it's like freelance contracting versus full-time. But just talking about general red flags and what we see a lot every single day, talking to founders and hiring managers, is a lot of times if they see someone who just had a string of freelancing contracting, it's not really highly upon, or some of them might just look down upon it or might not get too excited about it, right? So definitely keep that in the back of your mind. The same thing also applies to people who are self-employed, right? So self-employed can mean so many different things. You can be freelancing and argue that you're self-employed. You could have a business that, you know, doesn't go anywhere, that doesn't reach any success, that you haven't raised any money, you can still call yourself self-employed. Or you can be someone who's raised $50 million from top VCs and still call yourself self-employed. So I think in the self-employment world or hierarchy, there's a huge spectrum, right? And it's up to us recruiters to understand what does self-employment actually mean. Is this credible? Is this something that could provide perceived value to the candidate's background or take away from it or possibly even hurt, right? And for those that are self-employed right now that are looking for maybe switching to a job, yeah, sometimes it's unfair. But again, we're talking about just general red flags that not everyone has, but a lot of people would have, right? And they're like, hey, if we want someone full-time, we want someone to currently be working full-time right now, who's worked a good number of full-time roles before, that shows a really good track record, progression in their ideal kind of job history, right? So people who break that with job hopping or freelancing or self-employment, while for some it might be a deal breaker, for others, they just need to have more conversation and you just need to understand what's going on, what happened with the candidate, why are they looking for a full-time job right now when before they were working freelancing, or maybe they're working and kind of doing their own thing on their own business, right? So this is why it's so important for candidates to work with recruiters like us, because you don't just apply to a company and send in your job rec and you hope. You get to work with literally a partner like us that will frame your background the best way that we can to get you in that door to have that discussion, right? Another possible red flags is just gaps in the resume. So if someone, you know, had a job here and then their next job was 2 years later and there was a huge gap there, that might be a red flag for people, right? Or what if someone who's currently not working, that might be a red flag for people. Again, here it really just depends on just the reasoning, the justification, the real story, right? As long as the person has a really good excuse, layoff, they want to take a break, they want to travel the world, they have to help with the family, personal issues, a lot of these things can just be understandable for the most. But if you don't have a good reason or a good excuse and you just want to take a 5-year career break, that could be hard for a lot of people, right? Or that could be difficult for a lot of hiring managers or founders to understand or empathize or really just connect with, when they can easily connect or talk or interview with someone else who hasn't taken those career breaks, who's just as strong as you, who has a really good track record and job history of full-time employment, right? So it's all about framing your background with really good context and reasoning so that the company would know, and most importantly, working with recruiters like us to help guide you and mentor you and coach you on how to best frame or create that narrative so that you can really put your best foot forward and you can have that best first impressions. But again, a lot of these are general red flags. Just because you have them doesn't mean you can never find a job anywhere else. What this could mean though is if you're applying for jobs, maybe you apply more than one or two, because you might come in that situation where the person looking at your resume might immediately default to rejecting you based on your jumpiness, your self-employment or freelancing. Whereas if you played a numbers game, you kept applying, you might talk to more companies who might overlook that, who's like, that's fine, or I just need to know the reasoning behind it and I totally understand your background, right? So you want to play the numbers game, you want to diversify and not just pigeonhole yourself in one or two companies that unfortunately the hiring manager or founder might have just a bias against you. Once you go out there and you get a job, then obviously getting another full-time job, you stay there longer than a year and a half, your resume job history is kind of back on track. You getting that full-time job will now help you put a better kind of first impression to those that initially kind of wanted to reject you based on your red flags. So again, I hope that this helps for a job seeker's point of view, but also when it comes to recruiters out there, it's really, really important to be aware of some of these common red flags that you see, and you're in the game to get a lot of interviews for yourself. One easy best practice is just focus on those that don't have these red flags, right? So that you can really focus on some of the best talent and candidates out there, increasing the chance and probability that the company wants to interview your talent, right? Increasing then the chances of a process happening, a pipeline getting created, and hopefully leading to more final rounds and subsequent placements. So I hope that this helps. If you want to see more videos like these, please let me know. Give us a like, subscribe, click that bell. Honestly, it means the world to me. If there are other sourcing mistakes that you think I missed, please let me know down below. But yeah, just appreciate your time again, and we'll see you on the next one.